Step lightly across the parquet, and try not to catch your lace on the gilding. Tonight, we're slipping into the powdered wig and itchy silk stockings of an 18th century French courtier, waking up inside the sprawling golden maze of Versailles. It's an era where the morning sun doesn't just rise, it performs, filtering through those infamous palace windows to find a world made of mirrors, velvet, and very high stakes. You aren't just getting dressed, you're a lead actor in a 3-act play known as the Levee, where half the aristocracy is watching you put on your breeches as if it were a matter of national security. The air smells of lavender hair powder, expensive rouge, and the faint, lingering scent of a palace that hasn't seen a plumbing upgrade since, well, ever. And let's be honest, you probably won't survive this level of ritualistic theatre without a sudden, desperate urge to scream into a very expensive velvet pillow. So, before the king's first audience begins, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy these little trips back in time with me. And do drop a comment with your location and what time it is there. It's a lovely thought that someone in Tokyo might be drifting off just as someone in Toronto is starting their day. Now, dim those lights, perhaps click on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're lying there, half-assent, half-dream, when the first sound of your day arrives, not an alarm, not a rooster, but the heavy muffled thud of floor-length velvet curtains being drawn back by a silent, gloved hand. The fabric is thick, almost architectural, and as it slides along its rod, you catch that distinctive scent. Beeswax polished into the wood of the window frame, mixed with the faint, dry perfume of aged oak and the lingering smoke of last night's extinguished candles. It's a smell that says wealth, that says permanence, that says you are very, very far from a drafty peasant hut. The light that filters in is soft, diffused by the sheer linen under curtains, painting your four-poster bed in shades of pearl and pale gold. You don't jump up, you never jump up. In this world, every movement is measured, every gesture a performance, even when you're alone with your thoughts. And you're not really alone, are you? Just beyond the bed curtain, you sense the quiet presence of your valet, a man whose entire existence is calibrated to the rhythm of your awakening. Historians still argue whether the elaborate morning rituals of the French nobility were primarily about practical hygiene or elaborate social theatre. And honestly, looking at the sheer number of layers you're about to endure, it's probably a bit of both. The mainstream historical record is clear. Versailles wasn't just a palace, it was a machine for managing power, and your morning routine was a crucial cog in that machine. Every button, every fold of fabric, every whispered greeting was a note in a symphony of status. But here's a quirky fringe tidbit for you. Some contemporary accounts suggest that certain nobles actually preferred to be woken by the sound of a gentle harpsichord melody rather than a human voice, believing it set a more harmonious tone for the day's intrigues. Imagine that. Your alarm clock is a live musician playing a minuet just to rouse you from your down-filled slumber back to the curtains. That initial thud is just the overture. As the fabric settles, you notice the way the light catches the intricate weave of the velvet, the subtle sheen that comes from threads wrapped in real silver. It's cool to the touch, if you were to reach out, but you don't. You simply lie there, letting your eyes adjust, letting the room come into focus. The air itself feels different now, less stagnant, stirred by the slight movement of the drapes. You can hear the distant, muted sounds of the palace beginning to stir, a door closing somewhere down the corridor, the faint echo of a footman's step on marble. But in here, in your chamber, it's still a bubble of hushed anticipation. The velvet, you realize, isn't just for show. It's functional insulation, keeping the chill of the stone walls at bay, muffling the outside world so that your awakening can be a controlled, gradual affair. It's a textile buffer between you and the chaos of court life, and for these few precious minutes, it's still doing its job. You take a slow, deep breath. The scent of beeswax and old wood is now mingled with something else. The faint, clean aroma of the linen sheets, laundered with lavender and sun-dried in the palace gardens. It's a luxury so mundane to you now, but think about it. In an age before electric lights and central heating, this sensory experience, the play of light, the texture of fabric, the layered scents, was a primary marker of your place in the world. The heavy curtains are a statement. They say you have the space for such extravagance, the servants to manage them, the privacy they afford. And as you finally swing your legs over the side of the bed, your bare feet meeting the plush carpet, another buffer against the cold stone, you're already participating in the first act of the day's performance. The curtains are open, the stage is set, and you, my friend, are the star. Your feet sink into the carpet, but the chill of the stone floor beyond still whispers up through the fibres, a reminder that Versailles, for all its gilded glory, is still a vast, drafty stone beast. And that's when you hear it, the gentle, persistent hiss of green wood catching flame in the marble fireplace across the room. It's not a roaring blaze, that would be vulgar, overwhelming. No, this is a calculated warmth, a dry, radiating heat that begins to push back against the morning's bite, slowly, patiently. Like a servant who knows exactly how you like your comfort served. You turn your head, and there it is, the fire, a soft dance of amber and gold against the blackened hearth, the flames licking at logs that still carry the faint, sappy scent of freshly cut oak. The sound is hypnotic, a soft crackle, a whisper of steam escaping the wood's pores, the occasional pop as a resin pocket bursts. It's the palace's way of saying good morning without actually speaking. You shuffle a few steps closer, not because you need to, but because the pull of that warmth is almost gravitational. The heat doesn't hit you all at once. It arrives in waves, first warming your shins, then your thighs, a gentle embrace that seeps through the fine linen of your nightshirt. It's a different kind of warmth than you're used to in the modern world. No blasting furnace, no electric coil. This is organic, alive, tied to the rhythm of the wood itself. And speaking of wood, mainstream historical accounts note that the Palace of Versailles consumed staggering amounts of firewood daily. Entire forests were managed just to keep the nobility comfortable. In winter, some estimates suggest over 1,000 cords of wood were burned each day across the palace complex. That's not just heating, that's a logistical empire built on warmth. Historians still argue whether the preference for green wood, wood that hasn't been fully seasoned, was purely practical or a subtle display of wealth. Greenwood hisses and smokes more, yes, but it was also more readily available, and perhaps the very act of burning it, of dealing with its quirks, was a testament to having the staff to manage it. Here's a quirky fringe tidbit for you. Some valets were reportedly trained to select logs based on the specific pitch of their crackle, believing that certain sounds were more auspicious for the day ahead. Imagine your morning mood being set by the acoustic properties of firewood. It sounds absurd, but in a world where every detail is coded with meaning, why not? Back to the sensation. The dry heat is doing its work now, pushing the chill back into the corners of the room. You can feel it on your face, a gentle flush that has nothing to do with embarrassment and everything to do with physics. The stone floor near the hearth is almost warm to the touch, a rare luxury in a palace where most surfaces are perpetually cool. You notice the way the firelight plays on the polished marble of the mantelpiece, casting dancing shadows that make the carved cherubs and floral motifs seem to twitch and stir. It's a living painting, and you're standing inside it. The scent of the wood smoke is clean, resinous, with a hint of something almost sweet. Like the forest itself has been invited indoors for a private audience. You don't stare at the fire for too long, that would be indulgent. But you allow yourself a few more moments, letting the warmth seep into your bones, preparing you for the ordeal to come. Because let's be real, the dressing ritual that awaits is not exactly designed for comfort. It's designed for display, for status, for making you look like a god among men, even if you feel like a pincushion. But for now, the fireplace is your ally. It's the one element in the room that doesn't demand anything from you. It just gives, quietly, steadily, like a good servant should. And in a world where every interaction is transactional, that simple, wordless generosity is almost revolutionary. You take another step back, letting the heat linger on your skin as you turn toward the center of the room. The fire continues its soft symphony behind you, a constant, reassuring presence. It's a reminder that even in the most rigid of routines, there's room for a little natural beauty, a little unpredictability. The flames don't care about court etiquette. They just burn, following the ancient laws of chemistry and physics, indifferent to the powdered wigs and political scheming swirling around them. And maybe that's why you find it so calming. In a life where every gesture is scrutinized, the fire is gloriously, beautifully free. The warmth from the fireplace still clings to your back as you hear it. The first delicate clack of leather heels on parquet floor, so soft it's almost a suggestion rather than a sound. It's your valet, returning, but he's not alone. Behind him, a gentle procession begins to form. A silent ballet of some moving with practiced grace across the thick carpets that swallow most of their footsteps. The carpet is your ally here. Without it, the palace would echo like a cathedral, every footfall amplified into a proclamation. But here, in your chamber, the wool pile absorbs the sound, turning what could be a clatter into a whisper, a murmur, a rhythm. You can feel the vibrations more than hear them. A soft thrum through the floorboards, like the palace itself is breathing. The greetings are exchanged in tones so low they're almost subsonic, a low-frequency murmur that vibrates in your chest more than your ears. Bon matin, monsieur. À votre service. The words are formal, ritualized, but there's a warmth beneath them, a familiarity born of years of shared routine. These aren't just servants, they're the supporting cast in your daily performance, and they know their cues as well as you know yours. The sound of their voices is like the fireplace, a steady, reassuring presence, a reminder that you are cared for, attended to, elevated. And yet there's a tension in the air too. Every whisper carries the weight of expectation. Every softened step is a reminder that one misstep, one too loud cough, could mean dismissal, disgrace, a return to the obscurity they so carefully escaped. Mainstream historical records tell us that the household of a high noble at Versailles could employ dozens, even hundreds, of servants, each with a hyper-specific role. There were valets for your clothes, valets for your hair, valets for your shoes, and yes, even valets whose job was to warm your toilet seat. It sounds absurd to modern ears, but in the economy of status that governed Versailles, every extra pair of hands was a flex, a visible demonstration of your importance. Historians still argue whether this extreme specialization actually improved efficiency or just created more opportunities for petty drama and bureaucratic infighting. And if you've ever worked in an office, you probably have a guess. Here's a quirky fringe tidbit for you. Some valets were said to develop a kind of sixth sense for their master's mood, able to predict a bad day from the slightest change in breathing pattern or the way you stretched upon waking. They'd adjust their pace, their tone, even the order of your garments, all based on this silent, intuitive reading. It's like having a human algorithm for emotional management, programmed through years of close observation. Imagine someone knowing you're about to be grumpy before you even know it yourself, and quietly preparing your favorite snuff box to smooth things over, back to the sounds. The clack of leather heels is intermittent now, punctuated by the softer shuffle of fabric slippers, the gentle rustle of livery as someone bends to adjust a rug or straighten a cushion. It's a soundscape of meticulous care, every noise intentional, every silence deliberate. You close your eyes for a moment just listening. The rhythm is almost musical. Clack, pause, murmur, shuffle, pause. It's the soundtrack of privilege, yes, but also of profound interdependence. You may be the nobleman, but without these quiet footsteps, these whispered exchanges, your world would literally fall apart. Your clothes wouldn't appear, your breakfast wouldn't be prepared, your hair wouldn't be powdered into that perfect gravity-defying cloud. You are the center, but you are not self-sufficient. And in a culture obsessed with appearing utterly self-possessed, that quiet reliance is the great unspoken secret. You open your eyes and watch as the valet approaches, his movements so smooth they seem to glide rather than walk. He doesn't speak, he doesn't need to. His presence is a question and your slight nod is the answer. The ritual is beginning in earnest now. The hushed entrance wasn't just about sound, it was about transition. The private, sleepy you is receding. The public, performative you is about to take the stage. And these servants, with their soft steps and low voices, are the stage hands making that transformation possible. They are the invisible architecture of your identity. There's a peculiar intimacy in this too. These men see you at your most vulnerable, bedhead, morning breath, the slight puffiness of sleep, and they treat it all with the same reverent discretion they'd afford a king at his coronation. It's a professional kindness, yes, but it's also a human one. In a world of rigid hierarchies and calculated gestures, these moments of quiet, unspoken understanding are rare gems. You might never learn their full names, might never ask about their families, but in the shared language of routine, you know each other. The clack of his heel tells you he's approaching. The tilt of your head tells him you're ready. It's a dialogue without words, a dance without music. And then, as suddenly as it began, the hush deepens. The footsteps cease, the murmurs fade. The servants have taken their positions, just out of direct sight, waiting for the next cue. The room is still, but it's a different kind of stillness now. Not the emptiness of sleep, but the charged quiet of anticipation. Like the moment before a curtain rises, or a conductor lifts his baton. Everything is in place, everyone is ready, and you, standing there in your nightshirt, feeling the last echoes of those soft footsteps vibrate through the soles of your feet, know that the real performance is about to begin. The stillness in the room isn't empty, it's pregnant with expectation. And then a movement, a subtle shift of fabric, the softest clink of metal on wood. Your valet is approaching, and in his hands he carries the silver basin. It's not just a bowl, it's a statement. Polished to a mirror sheen, it catches the firelight and throws it back in liquid ripples, dancing across the ceiling like a secret coat. The coolness of the metal seems to radiate outward even before it touches you, a promise of refreshment in a world of heavy fabrics and warmer air. He kneels, never stands too tall when offering this, and presents the basin at the perfect height. You extend your hands and the first sensation is the weight. Substantial, solid, the kind of heft that speaks of craftsmanship and material worth. This isn't tin or pewter. This is sterling silver, hammered and shaped by hands that knew they were creating not just a tool, but a testament. The rim is smooth against your palms, slightly curved to fit the natural cradle of your fingers. And then, the water, it's cool, not icy, not tepid, but that perfect, sharp chill that makes you gasp just a little, that wakes up nerve endings you forgot were sleeping. The water itself is clear, almost luminous in the silver bowl, and as you dip your fingers in, you catch the scent. Rosewater, delicate and floral, layered over the faint, smoky sweetness of incense. It's a fragrance that cleanses more than just skin. It feels like it's purifying the very air around you, turning your chamber into a secular chapel. The rosewater was likely imported, distilled from petals grown in royal gardens or traded from distant lands. Mainstream historical accounts note that scented waters were a major luxury item in 18th century France, with recipes closely guarded by perfumers who supplied the court. The blend you're using, rose and incense, was particularly favoured for morning ablutions, believed to invigorate the spirit while maintaining an aura of sanctity. Historians still argue whether the elaborate scents used in noble toiletries were primarily about masking body odour in an era before daily showers, or about creating a sensory signature that announced one's presence before one even entered a room. And honestly, given how heavily powdered and perfumed the court became, it was probably a bit of both. Here's a quirky fringe tidbit for you. Some valets were trained to adjust the temperature of the washing water based on astrological charts, believing that certain planetary alignments called for warmer or cooler rinses to balance the humours. So while you're enjoying that perfect chill, your servant might be mentally noting that Mars is in ascendance, and thus this coolness is cosmically appropriate. It sounds outlandish, but in a world where medicine, magic and manners were deeply intertwined, why wouldn't your face wash be subject to the stars? You splash the water gently, not too vigorous. That would be undignified, and the sensation is electric. The coolness sharpens your senses, clears the last fog of sleep from your mind. The rosewater leaves a faint, silky residue on your skin, a whisper of fragrance that will linger beneath the heavier powders and pomades to come. The incense note is subtler, a background hum that ties this moment of cleansing to the sacred rituals of the palace chapel, reminding you that even your morning routine has a spiritual dimension. You dry your hands on the linen towel offered next, thick, damp, warmed slightly by the fire, and the contrast of textures is exquisite. The crisp, cool water, the soft, absorbent linen. It's a sensory sonata, each note perfectly pitched. As you finish, the valet takes the basin away with that same silent grace, and the chamber seems to settle into a new kind of stillness. The fire continues its soft hiss, The distant sounds of the palace are a muted backdrop, and the scent of rosewater and incense hangs in the air like a benediction. This moment, the cleansing, the cooling, the fragrant pause, is the pivot point of your morning. Before this, you were private, sleepy, vulnerable. After this, you begin the transformation into the public figure, the nobleman, the player in the grand theatre of Versailles. The silver basin wasn't just for washing. It was a ritual object, a threshold. And now that you've crossed it, there's no going back. You stand there for a heartbeat longer, letting your hands air dry, feeling the faint tackiness of the rosewater, the coolness evaporating into the warmed air. The valet is already moving to the next station, preparing the garments that will soon encase you in layers of status and symbolism. But for this brief suspendment, you are simply you, clean, scented, awake. The heavy velvet curtains frame the window. The fireplace radiates its dry comfort. The echoes of hushed footsteps have faded, and the silver basin has done its work. The stage is set, the props are in place, and the actor is ready. It's easy to romanticize this, to see only the beauty and the luxury. But let's not forget the flip side. This entire ritual, this exquisite attention to sensory detail, exists within a system of profound inequality. The rosewater on your hands was paid for by taxes levied on peasants who might never smell anything sweeter than damp earth. The silver basin was crafted by artisans who lived in cramped, dark workshops, their eyesight failing from the fine detail of their labour. The incense was traded along routes that depended on colonial exploitation. Mainstream history often glosses over these contradictions, focusing on the splendour of Versailles while marginalising the suffering that funded it. And that's a tension worth holding, even in a bedtime story, because the past isn't just pretty pictures and powdered wigs. It's complex, messy, and deeply human. But for now, in this quiet chamber, with the scent of roses and incense wrapping around you like a soft cloak, you allow yourself to simply experience the moment. The coolness on your skin, the gentle fragrance, the quiet efficiency of the servant who anticipates your every need. It's a bubble of sensory pleasure, a small oasis in the demanding day ahead. And as you turn from the basin, your hands clean, your spirit refreshed, you know that the next phase awaits. The shirt, the linen, the lace, they're calling. But for this one, perfect suspended breath, you just be. The rosewater still clings to your skin, a faint floral ghost as your valet steps forward once more. This time his hands are empty, but his intention is clear. He approaches your back, and you feel the softest brush of fabric against fabric, his livery against your nightgown. And then the sound, a gentle, luxurious rustle like silk whispering secrets to itself. The nightgown, heavy, opulent, woven from threads that probably travelled halfway around the world, begins to slide from your shoulders. It's not a hurried removal. That would be undignified, almost violent. No, this is a slow, deliberate unveiling, each inch of fabric released with the care of a curator handling a priceless manuscript. As the silk pools at your feet, you feel it immediately. The cool morning air, unfiltered, unmediated, kissing your bare skin. It's a shock, but a pleasant one. A crisp, clean sensation that raises goosebumps along your arms, your back, your chest. The chamber is warm, thanks to that ever-his fireplace. But the air itself still carries the bite of early morning, the residual chill of stone walls and vast, unheated corridors. This sudden exposure isn't just physical, it's psychological. For a fleeting moment, you are stripped of your status, your armor, your identity. You are simply flesh and bone, vulnerable and human. And then, just as quickly, the ritual reasserts itself. The valet doesn't linger. He never does. He lifts the discarded nightgown with 2 fingers, as if it might stain his skin, and folds it with precise, economical movements. The silk makes a soft, sighing sound as it's folded, a final whisper before it's tucked away, ready for the evening's return. Mainstream historical accounts tell us that nightgowns for the 18th century nobility were often made from the finest silks, imported from China or woven in Lyon, France's silk capital. They weren't just sleepwear. They were status symbols, often embroidered with silver or gold thread, lined with fur in winter, and scented with sachets of lavender or orris root to keep moths at bay. The act of removing one wasn't merely practical. It was a symbolic shedding of the private self, preparing for the public persona to be constructed anew each day. Historians still argue whether the elaborate dressing rituals of the French court were primarily about reinforcing social hierarchy or about creating a shared cultural language that bound the nobility together. And honestly, watching your nightgown being folded with such reverence, it feels like a bit of both. Here's a quirky fringe tidbit for you. Some nobles reportedly believed that the way their nightgown was removed could influence their luck for the day. If the silk slid off smoothly, without snagging, it was an omen of a seamless, successful day ahead. If it caught or tore even slightly, it might prompt a quiet consultation with a personal astrologer or a last-minute change of plans. It sounds superstitious, but in a world where every detail was read for meaning, why wouldn't the behavior of your sleepwear be part of the cosmic calculus? Back to the sensation. The cool air on your skin is invigorating, almost electric. You can feel every draft in the room now. The gentle flow from the window, the warmer rise from the fireplace, the subtle currents created by the movement of servants. Your skin prickles, not from cold, but from awareness. This is a body being prepared, being tuned like an instrument before a performance. The valet is already moving to the next station, where the day's first garment awaits, the shirt. But before that, you stand there for a heartbeat, just feeling. The contrast is exquisite. The memory of the silk's weight, smooth and heavy, against the current lightness, the air dancing over your pores. It's a reminder that luxury isn't just about accumulation. It's also about subtraction, about the strategic revelation of what lies beneath. You take a slow, deep breath. The air smells different now, less of rosewater and incense, more of the clean, slightly mineral scent of the palace itself. Stone, wax, and the faint, ever-present aroma of beeswax candles. It's a smell that says history, that says permanence, that says you are part of something much larger than yourself. And yet, in this moment, you are also intensely, achingly present. The cool air on your skin is an anchor to the now, a sensory checkpoint that says, you are here, you are awake, you are about to become. The valet returns, and with him comes the next layer, the shirt. But before he drapes it over your arms, before the crisp linen meets your skin, you allow yourself this one, suspended moment of exposure. It's not vanity, it's necessity. In a day that will be spent encased in layers of fabric, restriction, and expectation, this brief encounter with the unadorned air is a luxury in its own right. It's a reminder that beneath the powder and the lace, the gold and the ceremony, you are still human, still mortal, still capable of feeling a simple, unmediated chill. And then, as if on cue, the valet speaks softly, respectfully. Monsieur, it's not a command, it's an invitation, a gentle nudge back into the ritual. You nod, and the moment passes. The cool air is still there, but now it's framed by anticipation. The shirt is coming, the linen is your wrists. But for this one, perfect breath, you just feel. The silk is gone, the air is here, and you, standing in the centre of your chamber, are ready for what comes next. The valet's hands are steady as he presents the shirt, and the first thing you notice is the sound. A crisp, almost architectural rustle, like paper being unfolded in a library. This isn't the soft whisper of silk. This is the assertive crackle of freshly starched linen, a fabric that has been boiled, bleached, pressed, and treated with a kind of alchemical precision that turns plant fibre into a second skin of status. He drapes it over your arms with that same practiced grace, and you feel it immediately, the coolness. Not the chill of air, but the deliberate, refreshing cool of linen that has been aired in the palace gardens, folded with lavender sachets and kept in cedar chests to ward off moths and melancholy. It's a cool that feels intentional, like the fabric itself is whispering, I am prepared, I am pure, I am yours. As you slip your arms into the sleeves, the texture reveals itself in layers. Against your shoulders, the linen is smooth, almost slippery, the fine weave gliding over your skin with a whisper of friction. But at the wrists, the wrist, that's where the story changes. Here, the Valenciennes lace begins. It's not just trim, it's a masterpiece of needlework, each tiny flower, each delicate scroll crafted by hands that spent months on a single cuff. And against your skin it feels intricate. Slightly scratchy, yes, but in a way that's almost pleasurable, like a gentle exfoliation. A reminder that beauty often comes with a little discomfort. The lace is stiff too, held in shape by the same starch that gives the shirt its structure. So it doesn't flop or flutter. It holds its form, framing your wrists like a piece of wearable architecture. Mainstream historical records tell us that Valenciennes lace was among the most prized in 18th century Europe, named for the French town where it originated but actually produced in workshops across France and the Low Countries. It was notoriously difficult to make. Each piece required hundreds of hours of labour by highly skilled artisans, often women working in dimly lit rooms, their eyesight failing by middle age. A single pair of cuffs could cost more than a labourer earned in a year. Wearing it wasn't just fashion, it was a walking billboard of your wealth, your taste, your connection to the networks of luxury that powered the Ancien regime. Historians still argue whether the obsession with such delicate, impractical textiles was a form of artistic expression, or a deliberate strategy to make the nobility visually distinct from the rising merchant class. And if you've ever tried to move gracefully in lace that costs a fortune, you might lean toward the latter. Here's a quirky fringe tidbit for you. Some valets were said to carry small silver-tipped tools specifically for adjusting lace cuffs, believing that even the slightest misalignment could disrupt the wearer's aura of effortless elegance. They'd spend minutes, precious minutes in a morning already packed with ritual, tweaking, smoothing, ensuring that every scallop of lace sat at the exact same angle on both wrists. It sounds obsessive, but in a world where your appearance was your currency, why wouldn't you invest in microscopic perfection? Back to the sensation. The lace against your wrists is a constant, subtle presence. Every time you move your hands, adjusting a sleeve, reaching for a goblet, gesturing in conversation, you feel it. That delicate scratch, that intricate texture, a tactile reminder of the craftsmanship that went into your attire. It's not uncomfortable exactly, it's more like a gentle insistence. The lace says, remember who you are, remember what you represent, and in a way that's the point. In a culture where every gesture was scrutinized, every detail read for meaning, even the feel of fabric against your skin was part of the performance. You're not just wearing lace, you're embodying it. The starch adds another layer of sensation. It gives the linen a slight rigidity, a crispness that resists wrinkling, that holds its shape no matter how you move. But it also has a texture of its own, a faint powdery residue that transfers to your skin, a dry, almost chalky feel that mingles with the lingering rosewater from your earlier ablutions. It's a strange combination, floral and mineral, soft and sharp, and it becomes part of your sensory signature for the day. You catch a whiff of it when you raise your hand to your face, the clean, slightly alkaline scent of starch, layered over the floral notes of rosewater and the smoky sweetness of incense. It's a perfume of preparation, a fragrance of becoming. The valet watches your wrists with a critical eye, but he doesn't fuss. He knows the lace is perfect. He chose it himself after all. Instead, he moves to the next task, leaving you to acclimate to this new layer. You flex your fingers just slightly, and the lace responds with a soft rustling whisper. It's a sound that's both delicate and assertive, like the fabric itself is announcing its presence to the room, and in a way it is. In the visual economy of Versailles, your wrists were often on display, holding a snuff box, gesturing during conversation, resting on the arm of a chair. The lace wasn't just decoration, it was communication. It said, I have the means to wear something this fragile, this expensive, this impractical. I am so secure in my status that I can afford to be delicate. You take a moment to appreciate the craftsmanship. Up close, the Valenciennes lace is a universe of detail. Tiny flowers no bigger than a pinhead, scrolls so fine they seem to dissolve into air. A mesh so delicate it looks like it might vanish if you breathe too hard, and yet it's durable enough to withstand the rigours of a day at court. Though rigours here might mean sitting, walking slowly, and avoiding any sudden movements that might snag the threads. It's a paradox, really. Something so fragile used to signal something so permanent. But that's Versailles in a nutshell. Beauty built on tension, elegance sustained by effort. The coolness of the linen has warmed slightly now, conforming to your body heat, but the lace at your wrists remains crisp, a constant tactile anchor. You find yourself adjusting your posture, just slightly, to keep the cuffs perfectly aligned. It's not conscious, it's instinctive. The fabric is teaching you how to move, how to be. And in that lesson, there's a kind of freedom. You don't have to think about your status. The lace does it for you. You don't have to announce your wealth. The craftsmanship speaks for itself. All you have to do is wear it and let it do its work. The valet steps back, and for a moment, you simply stand there, feeling the shirt settle against your skin. The crisp linen, the scratchy lace, the faint scent of starch. It's a sensory triad that says preparation, precision, performance. And beneath it all, that coolness, that refreshing chill that woke you up a little more, that sharpened your senses for the day ahead. It's easy to dismiss such details as mere vanity, but in a world where every interaction was a negotiation, every glance a calculation, these textures were tools. They helped you navigate the complex social landscape of Versailles. One stitch, one starched fold, one scratchy lace cuff at a time. The valet's hands hover for a heartbeat, holding the next garment suspended in the air between you. It's not just a piece of clothing, it's a testament to patience, to skill, to an entire economy of luxury built on the principle that nothing, absolutely nothing, should be rushed. And then, with a movement so slow it feels almost meditative, he begins to drape the fabric over your arm. You feel the weight first, substantial but not burdensome. It's the weight of quality, of density, of threads woven so tightly they create a fabric that feels almost liquid in its drape. It settles against your skin with a soft sighing sound like a whisper of contentment. His hands are careful, so careful. They don't grab, don't pull, don't hurry. They guide, they adjust, they ensure. Every fold is intentional, every placement calculated to avoid even the hint of a crease. You can feel the tension in his fingers, not from strain, but from concentration. This is a man who has spent years, maybe decades, perfecting this one motion, the transfer of fabric from servant to master without introducing a single wrinkle. It's a skill that sounds trivial until you try it, until you realize how easily linen can betray you, how a slight tug, a momentary lapse, can introduce a fold that will take hours of pressing to remove. In the economy of Versailles, time was luxury, and wrinkles were wasted time. Mainstream historical accounts tell us that the care given to noble garments was extraordinary. Clothes weren't just washed and worn. They were maintained by entire teams of specialists, laundresses who used secret recipes for starch, pressers who heated irons over charcoal with meticulous temperature control, menders who could repair a torn lace cuff so invisibly it looked untouched. A single outfit might require days of preparation before it was deemed fit for court. And the reason wasn't just aesthetics, it was politics. A wrinkle could be read as carelessness, as disrespect, as a sign that your household was in disarray. In a world where perception was power, your clothes weren't just covering your body. They were broadcasting your competence, your control, your worth. Historians still argue whether this extreme attention to textile maintenance was a practical necessity in an era before synthetic fibers or a deliberate strategy to create barriers to entry for those without the resources to maintain such standards. And if you've ever tried to keep a white linen shirt pristine for a week, you might have a guess. Here's a quirky fringe tidbit for you. Some valets reportedly practice their draping techniques on mannequins filled with sand, believing that the slight give of the weighted form better simulated the human body than a rigid stand. They'd spend hours perfecting the angle of a sleeve, the fall of a hem, until the fabric settled with that elusive, effortless grace that made it look like it had simply chosen to be there. It sounds obsessive, but in a culture where every detail was scrutinized, why wouldn't you rehearse the mundane until it became magic? Back to the sensation. The fabric against your arm is cool at first, then slowly warms to your skin, conforming without clinging. You can feel the weave, a fine, tight pattern that feels almost smooth, but with just enough texture to keep it from sliding away. It's a fabric that demands respect, that asks to be handled with intention. And the valet does. His fingers brush yours as he adjusts the drape, and you feel the calluses on his hands, work-worn skin against your own, a tactile reminder of the labor that underpins your luxury. It's a moment of contact that's both intimate and impersonal, professional and human. He doesn't linger, he never does, but in that brief touch, there's a whole world of unspoken understanding. He knows the weight you carry, literally and figuratively, and he's here to make it just a little lighter. The absence of creases isn't just visual, it's tactile. A wrinkled fabric feels different against the skin, bunched, uneven, distracting. A smooth fabric feels like a second skin, like it was made for you, because in a way it was. This garment was cut to your measurements, stitched by hands that knew your posture, your proportions, your preferences. The drape isn't accidental, it's engineered, and as the valet steps back to admire his work, you feel it. The perfect fall of the fabric, the way it follows the lines of your body without constraining them, the subtle weight that grounds you without burdening you. It's a sensation of being held, of being supported, of being presented in the best possible light. You flex your arm, just slightly, and the fabric responds with a soft, fluid movement. No rustle, no crackle, just a gentle whisper of motion. It's a sound that speaks of quality, of craftsmanship, of materials that were chosen not just for their beauty, but for their behavior. This isn't just cloth, it's a collaborator in your performance. It moves with you, enhances you, never fights you. And in a day that will be filled with rigid protocols, stiff collars, and restrictive layers, this moment of fluidity is a small luxury. It's a reminder that even within constraint there can be grace. The valet's eyes flick over the garment one last time, a quick, professional assessment, and then he nods almost imperceptibly. It's perfect. Of course it is. He wouldn't have presented it otherwise. But that nod isn't just about the fabric, it's about the ritual. It's a silent acknowledgement that this step, too, has been completed correct, that you are one step closer to being ready, to being seen. And in that nod, there's a kind of satisfaction. Not pride, that would be presumptuous, but the quiet contentment of a job well done, of a craft honoured. You take a slow breath, and the fabric moves with you, a gentle ripple that feels almost alive. It's strange how something so inanimate can feel so responsive. But that's the magic of fine textiles. They have a memory, a personality, a way of interacting with the world that goes beyond mere utility. This fabric remembers the hands that wove it, the dyers who coloured it, the cutters who shaped it, the pressers who smoothed it. And now it remembers you. It will carry your scent, your movements, your presence throughout the day. It will be seen by dozens, maybe hundreds of eyes at court, and it will never wrinkle. Not on its watch, the valet steps away, and for a moment you simply stand there, feeling the garment settle into place. The weight is comforting, the drape is perfect, the absence of creases is a small victory in a day full of them. You catch a whiff of the fabric, a clean, slightly mineral scent, like linen aired in a garden at dawn, layered over the faint, sweet aroma of the cedar chest where it was stored. It's a fragrance of preparation, of anticipation, of becoming. And beneath it all, that coolness, that refreshing chill that woke you up a little more, that sharpened your senses for the day ahead. It's easy to dismiss such details as mere vanity. But in a world where every interaction was a negotiation, every glance a calculation, these textures were tools. They helped you navigate the complex social landscape of Versailles. One stitch, one starched fold, one perfectly draped sleeve at a time. And as you stand there, feeling the fabric against your skin, you know that the next layer awaits. The stockings, the buttons, the cravat, they're calling. But for this one perfect breath, you just feel the weight, the drape, the grace. And you standing in the centre of your chamber are ready for what comes next. The shirt is settled, the lace is aligned, the fabric drapes without a single rebel fold, and then a sound. Soft, rhythmic, almost musical. The gentle trickle of water into metal. Your valet has returned to the silver basin, and with a pitcher held just so, he pours a slow, steady stream that sings against the polished surface. It's not a splash. That would be chaotic, undignified. No, this is a controlled cascade, a liquid aria that fills the chamber with the clean, crisp sound of freshness. The water is cool. You can hear it in the way it hits the silver, a bright, clear note that cuts through the warmer ambient sounds of the fireplace and the distant palace hum. He sets the pitcher down, no sound, of course, and lifts a linen towel from a nearby stand. This isn't the delicate lace-trimmed handkerchief you might carry in your pocket later. This is a working towel, thick, heavy, woven for absorption rather than display. It's been dampened with that same rosewater-infused water from the base, wrung to a precise consistency. Moist enough to cleanse, dry enough not to drip. He approaches and you extend your hands once more. The first sensation is the weight of the towel itself. Substantial, dense, the kind of heft that speaks of quality linen, tightly woven, designed to last. It's cool against your palms, that same refreshing chill that wakes up your nerve endings, that sharpens your focus for the tasks ahead. Then, the pressure. He doesn't dab, that would be tentative, unsure. He presses firmly, evenly, methodically, starting at the base of your palms and moving outward to your fingertips. The linen is slightly rough, not unpleasantly so, but with enough texture to feel effective, to feel like it's actually doing something. You can feel the moisture transferring from towel to skin, not soaking, just gently hydrating, leaving a faint, cool dampness that evaporates slowly in the warmed air of the chamber. The sound is subtle, a soft, muffled pat-pat-pat, like distant rain on a roof, rhythmic and calming. It's a sound that says care, that says attention, that says you are being tended to with the same meticulous precision that governs every other aspect of your morning. Mainstream historical accounts tell us that hand-washing rituals in 18th century noble households were elaborate affairs, often involving multiple basins, scented waters, and towels of varying textures for different purposes. The silver basin you're using wasn't just for show. Silver was believed to have purifying properties, and its coolness helped close pores after washing. The linen towels were changed frequently, sometimes after every use, and laundered with special care to maintain their absorbency without becoming too soft. In an era before germ theory, these practices were based on humoral medicine and notions of cleanliness tied to moral virtue. Historians still argue whether the elaborate hand-washing rituals of the French court were primarily about actual hygiene, or about performing a kind of secular sacrament that reinforced the noble body as a site of purity and distinction. And honestly, given how heavily powdered and perfumed the court became, it was probably a bit of both. Here's a quirky fringe tidbit for you. Some valets were said to warm the towels slightly over a brazier before pressing them to their master's hands, believing that the contrast between cool water and warm linen helped balance the body's humours and promote a sense of well-being. They'd test the temperature against their own inner wrist first, ensuring it was just right, not too hot to startle, not too cool to comfort. It sounds like spa treatment avant la lettre, but in a world where health, beauty and status were deeply intertwined, why wouldn't your hand towel be part of a holistic wellness routine? Back to the sensation. The firm pressure of the towel is almost meditative. It's not a massage exactly, but it has a rhythmic, intentional quality that feels soothing, grounding. Each press is deliberate, each movement calculated to dry without rubbing, to cleanse without irritating. You can feel the linen absorbing the last traces of moisture from your skin, leaving it smooth, cool, faintly scented with that lingering rosewater note. The dampness evaporates slowly, creating a gentle cooling effect that's oddly refreshing in the warmed air of the chamber. It's a small pleasure, but in a day that will be filled with larger, more demanding performances. These small pleasures matter. They're the punctuation marks in the sentence of your routine, the moments of pause that give meaning to the motion. The valet's hands are steady as he works, his fingers careful not to let the towel slip or bunch. He knows the exact amount of pressure needed, the precise sequence of movements that will leave your hands perfectly prepared for the next stage. The layering of state, the stockings, the buttons, the cravat. Your hands are instruments of status, after all. They'll hold a snuff box, gesture in conversation, adjust a wig, sign a decree. They need to look pristine, feel comfortable, move with grace. And this towel, this firm, damp press, is part of that preparation. It's not just about drying, it's about priming. As he finishes, he folds the towel with that same economical grace and sets it aside. The sound of the water has ceased. The basin sits quiet, its work done for now. But the sensation lingers. The coolness on your skin, the faint tackiness of the rosewater, the subtle scent of clean linen that now mingles with the starch of your shirt and the scratch of your lace cuffs. It's a layered fragrance, a complex aroma that says preparation, that says ritual, that says you are becoming. You flex your fingers just slightly, and they feel responsive, alert, ready. The coolness has sharpened your senses, the pressure has grounded you, the scent has focused you. It's strange how such a simple act, washing and drying your hands, can feel so transformative. But that's the magic of ritual. It takes the mundane and makes it meaningful, the routine and makes it sacred. In a world where every gesture was coded with meaning, even the way you dried your hands could speak volumes about your character, your status, your attention to detail. The valet steps back, and for a moment you simply stand there, feeling your hands. They're clean, cool, scented, prepared. They're ready for the next layer, the next step, the next performance. And in that readiness, there's a kind of confidence, not arrogance, that would be vulgar, but the quiet assurance that comes from knowing you've been properly prepared, that every detail has been attended to, that you are, in this moment, exactly as you should be. It's easy to dismiss such details as mere indulgence, but in a world where perception was power, these small rituals were essential. They weren't just about comfort. They were about control, about demonstrating that you had the resources, the staff, the knowledge to care for yourself in the most meticulous way possible, about showing that you understood the language of status, that you could speak it fluently, that you could wear it like a second skin. And as you stand there, feeling the coolness on your hands, the faint scent of rosewater and linen wrapping around you like a soft cloak, you know that the next phase awaits. The stockings, the buttons, the cravat, they're calling. But for this one perfect breath, you just feel the firm press, the cool linen, the quiet satisfaction of a job well done, and you, standing in the center of your chamber, are ready for what comes next. Your hands are clean, cool, scented, and now your valet kneels, not in submission but in surface movement so practiced they seem to flow rather than bend. In his hands he holds the next layer, silk stockings. They're not bunched or folded, they're arranged in a gentle spiral like a sleeping serpent, the fabric catching the firelight in subtle liquid ripples. He begins at your ankle, and the first sensation is the slide. Silk against skin, smooth as a whisper, cool as a secret. It glides upward with almost no resistance, a sensation that's both intimate and impersonal, luxurious and functional. You can hear it, a soft, continuous shushing sound like wind through tall grass, or pages turning in a rare book. It's a sound that says elegance, that says refinement, that says you are being dressed by hands, that know the difference between mere fabric and art. As the stocking climbs your calf, you feel the tension build, not in the fabric, but in the moment. This isn't just clothing, it's a commitment. Silk stockings in the 18th century weren't stretchy like modern synthetics. They were woven to fit, cut on the bias, shaped to the leg with a precision that required both skill and patience, and they didn't stay up on their own. That's where the garters come in. Your valet reaches for a ribbon, silk of course, dyed to match the stockings, edged with a whisper of silver thread, and begins to knot it just below your knee. The sensation is immediate, a gentle, firm pressure, a cinching that's snug but not restrictive, a reminder that even luxury has its boundaries. You can feel the ribbon's texture against your skin, smooth on one side, slightly napped on the other, and the precise, deliberate movements of his fingers as he ties the knot. Loop, pull, adjust, secure. It's a small act, but it's loaded with meaning. In a world where every detail was coded, the way your garter was tied could signal everything from your mood to your political allegiance. Mainstream historical accounts tell us that silk stockings were among the most essential and expensive items in a nobleman's wardrobe. Produced in Lyon, the silk capital of France, they were woven on specialized looms that could create the fine, sheer fabric that clung to the leg like a second skin. A single pair could cost as much as a laborer earned in months, and they were so delicate that they often needed mending after just a few wears. Nobles would own dozens of pairs, each reserved for specific occasions, each maintained by a team of specialists, who could repair a run so invisibly it looked untouched. Historians still argue whether the obsession with sheer silk stockings was primarily about displaying the beauty of century France, or about genuine aesthetic ideal in a visible marker of class that distinguished the nobility, from the wool or linen-clad masses. And if you've ever tried to walk gracefully in stockings that cost a fortune, you might lean toward the latter. Here's a quirky fringe tidbit for you. Some valets were said to tie garter knots in specific patterns based on the day of the week or the phase of the moon, believing that certain configurations brought good luck or protected against misfortune. A knot tied on a Monday might be looped 3 times for prosperity. One tied under a waxing moon might be secured with a left-handed twist for protection. It sounds superstitious, but in a world where every detail was read for meaning, why wouldn't the way you fastened your stockings be part of the cosmic calculus? Back to the sensation. The silk against your leg is cool at first, then slowly warms to your skin, conforming without clinging. You can feel the weave, a fine, tight pattern that feels almost liquid, but with just enough texture to keep it from sliding away. It's a fabric that demands respect, that asks to be handled with intention, and the valet does. His fingers brush your calf as he adjusts the stocking, and you feel the calluses on his hands, work-worn skin against your own, a tactile reminder of the labour that underpins your luxury. It's a moment of contact that's both intimate and impersonal, professional and human. He doesn't linger, he never does. But in that brief touch, there's a whole world of unspoken understanding. He knows the tension you carry, literally and figuratively, and he's here to make it just a little lighter. The garter ribbon adds another layer of sensation. It's stiff, held in shape by a light starch, so it doesn't flop or flutter. It holds its form, framing your knee like a piece of wearable architecture. Against your skin, it feels precise. Slightly scratchy, yes, but in a way that's almost pleasurable, like a gentle reminder that beauty often comes with a little discomfort. The knot itself is a small, intricate thing, a bow that's symmetrical, secure, and subtly decorative. It's not just functional, it's ornamental. In a culture where even the backs of your knees might be seen, when you sat, when you bowed, when you ascended a staircase, the garter was part of the performance. It said, I have the means to wear something this delicate, this expensive, this impractical. I am so secure in my status that I can afford to be delicate. You flex your leg, just slightly, and the silk responds with a soft, fluid movement. No rustle, no crackle, just a gentle whisper of motion. It's a sound that speaks of quality, of craftsmanship, of materials that were chosen not just for their beauty, but for their behaviour. This isn't just cloth, it's a collaborator in your performance. It moves with you, enhances you, never fights you. And in a day that will be filled with rigid protocols, stiff collars, and restrictive layers, this moment of fluidity is a small luxury. It's a reminder that even within constraint there can be grace. The valet moves to the other leg, repeating the ritual with the same meticulous care. The slide of silk, the cinch of ribbon, the precise knot. It's a symphony of repetition, each movement mirroring the last, creating a rhythm that's almost meditative. You close your eyes for a moment, just feeling the coolness of the silk, the firmness of the garter, the faint scent of the ribbon, dyed with natural pigments, scented with a whisper of lavender to ward off moths. It's a sensory triad that says preparation, precision, performance. And beneath it all, that slide, that shushing sound that seems to whisper, you are ready, you are becoming. Mainstream historical records note that the act of putting on stockings was often one of the few moments in the dressing ritual where the nobleman was seated, allowing for a brief pause in the otherwise standing performance. This wasn't just practical, it was symbolic. Sitting was a position of rest, of reception, of contemplation, and in that seated moment, as the silk slid up your legs and the garters were knotted with care, you were allowed a fleeting second of stillness before the next layer of state was added. It's easy to dismiss such details as mere vanity, but in a world where every interaction was a negotiation, every glance a calculation, these textures were tools. They helped you navigate the complex social landscape of Versailles, one stitch, one starched fold, one silk-clad leg at a time. The valet steps back, and for a moment you simply sit there, feeling the stockings settle into place. The slide is complete, the garters are secure. The silk clings without constraining, the ribbon holds without biting. You catch a whiff of the fabric, a clean, slightly mineral scent, like silk aired in a garden at dawn, layered over the faint, sweet aroma of the cedar chest where it was stored. It's a fragrance of preparation, of anticipation, of becoming. And beneath it all, that coolness, that refreshing chill that woke you up a little more, that sharpened your senses for the day ahead. You stand, and the silk moves with you, a gentle ripple that feels almost alive. It's strange how something so inanimate can feel so responsive, but that's the magic of fine textiles. They have a memory, a personality, a way of interacting with the world that goes beyond mere utility. This silk remembers the hands that wove it, the dyers who coloured it, the cutters who shaped it, the pressers who smoothed it. And now it remembers you. It will carry your scent, your movements, your presence throughout the day. It will be seen by dozens, maybe hundreds of eyes at court, and it will slide, just so, with every step you take. The valet's eyes flick over your legs one last time, a quick professional assessment. And then he nods almost imperceptibly. It's perfect. Of course it is. He wouldn't have presented it otherwise. But that nod isn't just about the stocking, it's about the ritual. It's a silent acknowledgement that this step, too, has been completed correctly, that you are one step closer to being ready, to being seen. And in that nod, there's a kind of satisfaction, not pride. That would be presumptuous, but the quiet contentment of a job well done, of a craft honoured. You take a slow breath and the silk moves with you, a gentle ripple that feels almost alive. It's a sensation of being held, of being supported, of being presented in the best possible light. And as you stand there feeling the silk against your skin, you know that the next layer awaits. The buttons, the cravat, the justacorps, they're calling. But for this one, perfect breath, you just feel. The slide, the tension, the grace. And you, standing in the centre of your chamber, are ready for what comes next. The silk stockings are secure, the garters knotted with that perfect symmetrical bow. And now your valet moves to the next task. He reaches for the waistcoat, and your eyes are drawn immediately to the front. A vertical cascade of buttons, dozens of them, each one a tiny masterpiece of craftsmanship. They're not just functional, they're decorative, each covered in the same silk as the garment itself, dyed to match with a precision that makes the colour seem to bloom from the fabric rather than sit on top of it. He begins at the bottom, and the first sensation is the touch. Cool, smooth, slightly convex against your fingertips as he guides your hand to hold the fabric steady. And then the sound comic. It's a small sound, but in the hushed chamber it's distinct, precise, almost musical. The button slips through its loop. A loop reinforced with hidden stitching sized to the exact diameter of the button and settles into place with a soft, satisfying thunk. Click again and again. The rhythm is hypnotic. Click, pause, click, pause, like a metronome marking time for the day ahead. Each button is pushed through with deliberate care, never rushed, never forced. The valet's fingers are nimble, practiced, moving with an economy of motion that speaks of years spent mastering this one, seemingly simple task. You can feel the tension in the fabric as each button is secured, a slight pull, a gentle gathering that gradually transforms the flat garment into a shaped, fitted piece that conforms to your torso like a second skin. Mainstream historical accounts tell us that buttons in 18th century noble attire were far more than mere fasteners. They were status symbols, often made from precious materials like gold, silver, enamel, or even miniature paintings encased in crystal. The silk-covered buttons you're wearing now are a more understated choice, but no less significant. Each one was hand-covered by a specialist artisan, the silk stretched and gathered with such precision that no seam was visible, no wrinkle apparent. A single waistcoat might feature 30 or more buttons, each one requiring minutes of careful work to attach. In an era before mass production, this level of detail wasn't just luxury. It was a testament to the time, skill, and resources at your disposal. Historians still argue whether the elaborate buttoning rituals of the French court were primarily about ensuring a perfect fit, or about creating a visible, audible performance of wealth that could be seen and heard across a crowded room. And if you've ever tried to fasten a single awkward button in a hurry, you might appreciate the skill involved in doing dozens with such effortless grace. Here's a quirky fringe tidbit for you. Some valets were said to count the clicks as they fastened buttons, believing that a consistent rhythm, neither too fast nor too slow, helped align the wearer's energy for the day ahead. A hurried click might portend rash decisions, a hesitant one, missed opportunities. They'd practice the motion until it became muscle memory, a steady, reassuring cadence that felt as good to hear as it did to perform. It sounds like superstition, but in a world where every detail was read for meaning, why wouldn't the sound of your buttons being fastened be part of the cosmic calculus? Back to the sensation. The buttons themselves are cool to the touch, the silk covering smooth but with just enough texture to provide grip. As each one is pushed through its loop, you feel a slight resistance, a gentle tug that gives way with a soft, yielding motion. It's not difficult, but it's not effortless either. There's a tactile feedback that tells you the garment is being secured properly, that the fit is being calibrated to your body. The loops are made of the same silk, braided into a sturdy cord that won't stretch or fray. And as the button settles into place, you hear that soft thunk, a sound that's both final and satisfying, like a puzzle piece clicking home. The rhythm builds as the valet works his way up your torso. Click, click, click. It's a sound that's both mundane and magical, ordinary and extraordinary. In the quiet of the chamber, it becomes a kind of percussion, a steady beat that underscores the other sounds of the morning, the hiss of the fireplace, the distant murmur of the palace, the soft rustle of fabric. It's a sound that says progress, that says preparation, that says you are being assembled, piece by piece, into the person you need to be for the day ahead. You catch a whiff of the waistcoat as it's being fastened, a clean, slightly mineral scent, like silk aired in a garden at dawn, layered over the faint, sweet aroma of the cedar chest where it was stored. It's a fragrance of preparation, of anticipation, of becoming, and beneath it all that rhythmic click-click, a sonic anchor that grounds you in the moment, that reminds you that even the smallest actions can be imbued with meaning when performed with intention. The valet's fingers brush yours as he works, and you feel the calluses on his hands, work-worn skin against your own, a tactile reminder of the labour that underpins your luxury. It's a moment of contact that's both intimate and impersonal, professional and human. He doesn't linger, he never does. But in that brief touch, there's a whole world of unspoken understanding. He knows the tension you carry, literally and figuratively, and he's here to make it just a little lighter. As the last button is secured, the valet steps back to admire his work. The waistcoat now fits like a glove, hugging your torso without constraining it, the line of buttons creating a vertical axis that draws the eye upward, toward your face, your expression, your presence. It's a subtle but powerful effect. The buttons aren't just holding the garment together. They're framing you, directing attention, enhancing your silhouette. In a culture where every glance was a calculation, every posture a statement, this kind of visual engineering was essential. You're not just wearing clothes, you're wearing a strategy. You take a slow breath, and the waistcoat moves with you, a gentle ripple that feels almost alive. It's strange how something so inanimate can feel so responsive. But that's the magic of fine tailoring. It has a memory, a personality, a way of interacting with the world that goes beyond mere utility. This waistcoat remembers the hands that cut it, the seamstresses who stitched it, the artisans who covered its buttons. And now it remembers you. It will carry your scent, your movements, your presence throughout the day. It will be seen by dozens, maybe hundreds of eyes at court. And it will click, just so, with every breath you take. Mainstream historical records note that the act of buttoning was often one of the most time-consuming parts of the dressing ritual, not just because of the number of buttons, but because each one had to be aligned perfectly, each loop checked for tension, each seam smoothed to invisibility. A single misaligned button could throw off the entire line of the garment, creating a visual discord that would be noticed by the trained eyes of the court. In a world where perception was power, such details weren't trivial, they were tactical. Historians still argue whether this extreme attention to buttoning was a practical necessity in an era before zippers and snaps, or a deliberate strategy to create barriers for those without the resources to maintain such standards. And if you've ever struggled with a stubborn button on a formal shirt, you might have a guess. The valet's eyes flick over the waistcoat one last time, a quick, professional assessment. And then he nods, almost imperceptibly. It's perfect. Of course it is. He wouldn't have presented it otherwise. But that nod isn't just about the buttons. It's about the ritual. It's a silent acknowledgement that this step, too, has been completed correctly, that you are one step closer to being ready, to being seen. And in that nod, there's a kind of satisfaction. Not pride. That would be presumptuous. But the quiet contentment of a job well done, of a craft honoured. You stand there for a moment, feeling the waistcoat settle into place. The buttons are secure, the fit is perfect, the line is clean. You catch a whiff of the fabric, a clean, slightly mineral scent, like silk aired in a garden at dawn, layered over the faint, sweet aroma of the cedar chest where it was stored. It's a fragrance of preparation, of anticipation, of becoming. And beneath it all, that rhythmic click-click, a sonic anchor that grounds you in the moment, that reminds you that even the smallest actions can be imbued with meaning when performed with intention. It's easy to dismiss such details as mere vanity, But in a world where every interaction was a negotiation, every glance a calculation, these textures were tools. They helped you navigate the complex social landscape of Versailles. One stitch, one starched fold, one rhythmic click at a time. And as you stand there, feeling the waistcoat against your skin, you know that the next layer awaits. The cravat, the justacorps, the finishing touches, they're calling. But for this one perfect breath you just feel. The click, the rhythm, the grace. And you, standing in the center of your chamber, are ready for what comes next. The waistcoat is buttoned, the rhythm of clicks still echoing softly in your ears, and now your valet reaches for the cravat. It lies across his forearm like a strip of cloud, stiff and pristine, the starched muslin holding its shape with an almost architectural rigidity. He lifts it, and you hear it before you feel it. A faint, crisp rustle, like dry leaves skittering over stone, or parchment being unfolded in a quiet library. It's a sound that says preparation, that says formality, that says the next layer isn't just about covering your body, it's about shaping your presence. He approaches your neck, and the first sensation is the coolness. Not the refreshing chill of linen against your hands, but a deliberate, almost bracing cool that wakes up the sensitive skin of your throat. The muslin is stiff, so stiff. It doesn't drape. It holds its form, resisting your movements with a gentle but firm insistence. As he begins to wrap it around your neck, you feel the texture, smooth on one side, slightly napped on the other, with just enough friction to keep it from sliding, but not so much that it irritates. It's a tactile paradox, soft yet unyielding, delicate yet demanding. The wrapping is methodical, almost meditative. Loop, pull, adjust, secure. Each movement is deliberate, each fold calculated to create that perfect, voluminous knot that sits at the base of your throat like a sculpted flourish. You can feel the tension build, not painfully but noticeably, a gentle pressure that reminds you, with every breath, that you are being encased, being framed, being prepared. The cravat doesn't just cover your neck, it defines it. It creates a visual axis that draws the eye upward, toward your face, your expression, your gaze. In a culture where every glance was a calculation, every posture a statement, this kind of visual engineering was essential. And then, the restriction. It's subtle at first, a slight limitation in how far you can turn your head, a gentle resistance when you try to tilt your chin too low. But as the valet tightens the final for securing the knot with a hidden pin, you feel it fully. The cravat is holding you. Not painfully, not oppressively, but firmly. It's asking, no, demanding, that you hold yourself a certain way, chin up, shoulders back, spine straight. It's not just clothing, it's a posture coach woven from muslin starch. You can't slouch in a cravat like this. You can't fidget. You can't collapse into yourself. It forces you into a regal bearing whether you feel regal or not. Mainstream historical accounts tell us that the cravat was one of the most iconic and restrictive elements of 18th century noble attire. Originating from Croatian mercenaries in French service, the word cravat derives from cravate, French for carotte. It evolved into a highly stylized accessory that required hours of practice to tie correctly. The starch used to stiffen the muslin was often made from wheat or rice, mixed with secret ingredients like gum arabic or even beer to achieve the perfect hold. A well-tied cravat could stand up to 2 inches from the neck, creating a dramatic frame for the face that was both elegant and intimidating. Historians still argue whether the extreme stiffness of noble cravats was primarily about aesthetic idealism or about physically enforcing the dignified, upright posture expected of the ruling class. And if you've ever tried to eat a meal while wearing a tightly bound neckcloth, you might lean toward the latter. Here's a quirky fringe tidbit for you. Some valets were said to whisper affirmations or auspicious phrases while tying the cravat knot, believing that the words woven into the fabric would influence the wearer's speech and demeanor for the day ahead. A valet might murmur clarity or grace with each fold, or even recite a short prayer for eloquence. It sounds like magic, but in a world where clothing was believed to carry symbolic power, why wouldn't the act of tying your cravat be a kind of secular blessing? Back to the sensation. The starch adds another layer of texture, a faint powdery residue that transfers to your skin, a dry, almost chalky feel that mingles with the lingering rosewater from your earlier ablutions. It's a strange combination, floral and mineral, soft and sharp, and it becomes part of your sensory signature for the day. You catch a whiff of it when you turn your head. The clean, slightly alkaline scent of starch, layered over the floral notes of rosewater and the smoky sweetness of incense. It's a perfume of preparation, a fragrance of becoming. The restriction isn't just physical, it's psychological. With your neck encased in that stiff, supportive embrace, you find yourself moving differently, speaking differently, even thinking differently. You can't mutter under your breath. The cravat encourages projection. You can't avoid eye contact. The upright posture it demands naturally aligns your gaze with others. It's a subtle but powerful form of behavioral conditioning, woven into the very fabric of your attire. In a world where every gesture was scrutinized, every word weighed, the cravat wasn't just an accessory. It was a tool for self-regulation, a wearable reminder of the persona you were expected to embody. The valet's fingers brush your throat as he makes the final adjustments, and you feel the calluses on his hands, work-worn skin against your own, a tactile reminder of the labor that underpins your luxury. It's a moment of contact that's both intimate and impersonal, professional and human. He doesn't linger, he never does. But in that brief touch, there's a whole world of unspoken understanding. He knows the tension you carry, literally and figuratively, and he's here to make it just a little lighter. As he steps back, you take a slow, deliberate breath. The cravat allows it, just barely. It's not suffocating, but it's present, a constant, gentle pressure that reminds you of its existence with every inhalation. You catch a glimpse of yourself in the looking glass, the crisp white of the muslin framing your face, the voluminous knot adding drama to your silhouette, the way your posture has naturally straightened in response to the constraint. It's a transformation. You don't just look the part, you feel the part. The cravat has done its work. Mainstream historical records note that the difficulty of tying a proper cravat led to the rise of specialized artisans known as cravatiers, who could create pre-tied versions or teach nobles the intricate folds required for different occasions. Some cravats were so elaborate, they required wire supports or internal frameworks to maintain their shape, turning a simple neckcloth into a feat of wearable engineering. Historians still argue whether this complexity was a genuine expression of artistic innovation or a deliberate strategy to make noble attire inaccessible to those without the time, skill, or staff to maintain it. And if you've ever struggled to tie a modern necktie, you might appreciate the challenge. You flex your neck, just slightly, and the cravat responds with a soft, rustling whisper. It's a sound that's both delicate and assertive, like the fabric itself is announcing its presence to the room. And in a way it is. In the visual economy of Versailles, your neck was often on display, holding a wig, framing a face, resting against a lace collar. The cravat wasn't just decoration, it was communication. It said, I have the means to wear something this restrictive, this impractical, this demanding. I am so secure in my status that I can afford to be constrained. The valet steps back, and for a moment you simply stand there, feeling the cravat settle into place. The stiffness is comforting, the restriction is grounding, the posture is enforced. You catch a whiff of the fabric, a clean, slightly mineral scent, like muslin aired in a garden at dawn, layered over the faint, sweet aroma of the cedar chest where it was stored. It's a fragrance of preparation, of anticipation, of becoming, and beneath it all that crisp rustle, a sonic anchor that grounds you in the moment, that reminds you that even the smallest constraints can be imbued with meaning when performed with intention. It's easy to dismiss such details as mere vanity, but in a world where every interaction was a negotiation, every glance a calculation, these textures were tools. They helped you navigate the complex social landscape of Versailles, one starched fold, one tightened knot, one regal posture at a time, and as you stand there, feeling the cravat against your skin, you know that the next layer awaits. The justacorps, the finishing touches, the final inspection. They're calling, but for this one, perfect breath, you just feel the stiffness, the restriction, the grace. And you, standing in the center of your chamber, are ready for what comes next. The cravat is secure, your posture elevated, your neck framed in that crisp, starched embrace. And now your valet approaches with the final layer of this intricate sequence, the justacorps. It hangs across his arms like a promise, heavy and opulent, the fabric catching the firelight in 1,000 tiny reflections that dance across the chamber walls. He doesn't rush, he never does. Instead, he presents the coat with a slow, deliberate motion, allowing you to take in its presence before it becomes part of yours. And what a presence it is! The first sensation is the weight. Not the gentle drape of silk or the crisp hold of linen, but a substantial, almost grounding heaviness that settles onto your shoulders the moment the valet guides your arms into the sleeves. It's surprising, really. You've worn this coat before, many times, but each morning, that initial burden feels like a reminder. This isn't just clothing, it's armor. The weight comes from more than just the wool or silk base. It's the embroidery, the lining, the structure, the sheer density of materials that have been layered, stitched, and shaped into a garment that declares your status with every fiber. You feel it in your shoulders, in your spine, in the way your center of gravity shifts, just slightly, as the coat settles into place. And then, the touch. Your fingers brush against the fabric and you feel it immediately. The cool, metallic sensation of wire embroidery, of gold-wrapped threads that have been woven into intricate patterns, floral motifs, scrolling vines, perhaps your family crest, each one a tiny testament to craftsmanship. The threads aren't just decorative, they're structural, adding weight, texture, and a subtle rigidity that helps the coat hold its shape. Against your skin, they feel cool, almost like touching polished metal, but with just enough give to remind you they're still fabric, still flexible, still meant to move with you. It's a tactile paradox, soft yet substantial, delicate yet durable, beautiful but burdensome. Mainstream historical accounts tell us that the justacorps was the quintessential outer garment of the 18th century nobleman, a knee-length coat that evolved from military wear into a highly stylized symbol of aristocratic identity. The gold-wrapped threads used in elite versions were made by wrapping fine silk or linen cores with thin strips of real gold leaf, a labor-intensive process that required specialized artisans known as passementeers. A single justacorps could feature hundreds of meters of such thread, embroidered in patterns that took weeks or even months to complete. The weight wasn't accidental. It was intentional. A heavy coat signaled wealth, not just because of the materials, but because only someone of means could afford to move through the world encumbered by such opulence. Historians still argue whether the extreme weight of noble outerwear was primarily about displaying material wealth, or about physically slowing the wearer's movements to enforce a dignified, deliberate pace. And if you've ever tried to dance in a coat that weighs as much as a small dog, you might have a guess. Here's a quirky fringe tidbit for you. Some valets were said to warm the gold-embroidered sections of the justacorps slightly over a brazier before dressing their master, believing that the contrast between cool metal and warm fabric helped balance the body's humors and prevented the chill of ambition from settling in the shoulders. They'd test the temperature with the back of their hand, ensuring it was just right. Not too hot to damage the threads, not too cool to startle. It sounds like spa treatment for status, but in a world where health, beauty, and power were deeply intertwined, why wouldn't your coat be part of a holistic wellness routine? Back to the sensation. The embroidery isn't just on the surface, it's integrated into the very structure of the garment. As you move your arms, you feel the subtle resistance of the gold-wrapped threads, the way they catch and release against the underlying fabric with a soft, almost musical whisper. It's not a rustle, it's more like a sigh, a gentle, metallic murmur that seems to echo the weight you carry. You can feel the patterns under your fingertips, raised floral motifs that feel like tiny landscapes, scrolling vines that trace the contours of your arms, geometric borders that frame your silhouette with architectural precision. Each stitch is a decision, each thread a statement, and together they create a texture that's both ornamental and functional, beautiful but deliberate. The valet's hands are steady as he adjusts the coat, smoothing the shoulders, aligning the seams, ensuring that the embroidery falls in perfect symmetry. His fingers brush against the gold threads, and you hear the faintest chime, a soft, high-pitched note that's almost imperceptible. But there, like a secret shared between fabric and wearer, it's a sound that says luxury, that says craftsmanship, that says you are being dressed by hands that know the difference between mere clothing and wearable art. He doesn't linger, he never does, but in that brief contact, there's a whole world of unspoken understanding. He knows the weight you carry, literally and figuratively. and he's here to make it just a little lighter. You take a slow breath, and the coat moves with you, a gentle ripple that feels almost alive. The weight is constant, but not oppressive. It's grounded, anchoring you in the moment, reminding you of the role you're about to play. The coolness of the gold threads against your skin is refreshing, almost invigorating, a tactile counterpoint to the warmth of the chamber and the stiffness of the cravat. You catch a whiff of the fabric, a clean, slightly mineral scent, like wool aired in a garden at dawn, layered over the faint, sweet aroma of the cedar chest where it was stored, and beneath it all, the subtle metallic tang of the gold-wrapped threads. It's a fragrance of preparation, of anticipation, of becoming. Mainstream historical records note that the care required to maintain gold-embroidered garments was extraordinary. The threads could tarnish if exposed to air for too long, so justacorps were often stored in silk bags lined with anti-tarnish materials like charcoal or specially treated paper. Cleaning was a delicate affair, requiring specialists who could remove dirt without damaging the fragile metal wrappings. A single stain could ruin months of work, which is why nobles often had multiple versions of the same garment for different occasions. Historians still argue whether this extreme maintenance was a practical necessity in an era before synthetic fibers or a deliberate strategy to create barriers to entry for those without the resources to sustain such standards. And if you've ever tried to keep a white shirt pristine for a week, you might have a guess the restriction isn't just physical, it's psychological. With the weight of the justacorps on your shoulders, you find yourself moving differently, speaking differently, even thinking differently. You can't rush, the coat demands deliberation. You can't slouch, the structure enforces posture. You can't forget, the weight is a constant reminder of the role you're playing. It's a subtle but powerful form of behavioral conditioning, woven into the very fabric of your attire. In a world where every gesture was scrutinized, every word weighed, the justacorps wasn't just an outer layer. It was a tool for self-regulation, a wearable reminder of the persona you were expected to embody. The valet steps back, and for a moment you simply stand there, feeling the coat settle into place. The weight is comforting, the embroidery is grounding, the posture is enforced. You catch a glimpse of yourself in the looking glass, the rich fabric framing your silhouette, the gold threads catching the light in 1,000 tiny sparks. The way your stance has naturally straightened in response to the constraint. It's a transformation. You don't just look the part, you feel the part. The justacorps has done its work. You flex your arms, just slightly, and the coat responds with a soft metallic whisper. It's a sound that's both delicate and assertive, like the fabric itself is announcing its presence to the room. And in a way, it is. In the visual economy of Versailles, your outerwear was often the first thing noticed, the initial impression that set the tone for every interaction that followed. The justacorps wasn't just decoration, it was communication. It said, I have the means to wear something this heavy, this expensive, this demanding. I am so secure in my status that I can afford to be encumbered by beauty. The valet's eyes flick over the coat one last time, a quick, professional assessment. And then he nods, almost imperceptibly. It's perfect, of course it is. He wouldn't have presented it otherwise. But that nod isn't just about the embroidery, it's about the ritual. It's a silent acknowledgement that this step too has been completed correctly, that you are one step closer to being ready, to being seen. And in that nod there's a kind of satisfaction, not pride that would be presumptuous, but the quiet contentment of a job well done, of a craft honoured. You take a slow breath and the coat moves with you, a gentle ripple that feels almost alive. It's a sensation of being held, of being supported, of being presented in the best possible light. And as you stand there, feeling the weight of the justacorps on your shoulders, you know that the next phase awaits. The hair powder, the sword belt, the pocket inventory, they're calling. But for this one, perfect breath, you just feel the weight, the cool metal, the grace, and you standing in the center of your chamber are ready for what comes next. The justacorps settles heavily across your shoulders, its gold-wrapped threads cool and grounding, and the chamber seems to hold its breath in the quiet aftermath. Then comes the soft rustle of heavy linen, followed by the delicate porcelain clink of a shallow bowl. Your valet steps forward with a wide-brimmed powdering cloak draped carefully over your upper body, a protective shroud of unbleached cotton meant to catch what's about to fall. In his other hand, he cradles a fine silk sieve filled with a pale, meticulously milled substance. He lifts it to your hairline, pauses for a single deliberate second, and gives it the lightest tap. The room transforms, a cloud rises, not thick or choky, but soft, deliberate, catching the amber firelight like suspended dust in a slow-moving sunbeam. It drifts downward in a quiet, unhurried descent, settling over your powdered pomade, your starched cravat, the heavy embroidery of your coat. You feel it before you smell it. A cool, dry mist that kisses your scalp, dusts your collarbones, and settles on your shoulders like a breath of winter. It's weightless, almost ethereal, leaving a faint, chalky trace on your skin that feels strangely soothing. And then the scent unfolds. It hits you slowly, layering itself in the quiet air. The earthy warmth of ground cloves, sharp and quietly spicy, mingling with the soft, floral sweetness of dried lavender. It's not overpowering, it's intimate. A dry fragrance that seems to cleanse the very atmosphere around you, replacing the heavier notes of rosewater and beeswax with something crisp, clean, and distinctly aristocratic. Mainstream historical accounts confirm that hair powder in the 18th century was typically made from finely ground wheat starch or potato flour, often scented with orris root, violet, or the very cloves and lavender you're breathing in right now. For the French nobility at Versailles, powdered hair was never merely a cosmetic preference. It was a calculated political and social statement. Louis XV's court had cemented the trend decades earlier, and by the mid-1700s, nearly every gentleman of standing wore his natural hair or a horsehair wig dressed with this fragrant starch. The powder adhered to thick pomades made from rendered animal fat, creating that iconic matte finish that read as status from across a candlelit salon. Maintaining it required relentless upkeep. A single morning at court meant leaving your chamber perfectly coiffed and often needing a discreet touch-up by dusk. Historians still argue whether the widespread adoption of hair powder was primarily a practical workaround for infrequent full-body washing, or an elaborate, expensive performance of racialized purity and refinement that reinforced rigid class boundaries. And if you've ever sat through a lengthy diplomatic audience while slowly raining dry starch onto your velvet lap, you might appreciate the sheer commitment required to pull it off. Here's a quirky fringe tidbit for you. Some valets were rumoured to mix their daily powder blends according to astrological almanacs, adding a pinch of clove on days ruled by Mars for asserted vigour, or lavender under a waning moon to promote calm deliberation. They'd tap the sieve in rhythmic, almost ritualistic patterns, 3 light puffs for prosperity, 2 heavier presses for authority, believing the way the clouds settled into the pomade could subtly influence the wearer's fortune for the day ahead. It sounds like theatrical superstition, but in a world where every gesture, garment, and grooming habit was read for omens, why wouldn't your morning cloud be part of the cosmic theatre? The valet moves the sieve in slow, sweeping arcs. Tap, drift, tap, drift. The sound is soft, almost meditative. A gentle exhale of air, a whisper of starch falling like fine snow onto linen and wool. You keep your eyes half closed, letting the sensation wash over you in slow waves. The powder feels cool against your temples, a dry, comforting weight that seems to absorb the lingering warmth of the fireplace. It catches the stray hairs at your nape, dusts your eyebrows, leaves a faint white trace along the dark silk of your cravat. It's strangely hypnotic, like being wrapped in a dry, fragrant blanket that pulls you away from urgency and into stillness. The cloves wake your sinuses just enough to keep you alert, while the lavender tugs gently at the edges of your focus, inviting that familiar, drowsy calm. As more of it settles, you notice how it interacts with the fabrics around you. On your shoulders, pooled against the protective cloak, it collects in soft, pale drifts that catch the light like crushed pearl. On your hair, it clings to the stiffened pomade, transforming your natural tone into that uniform, sculpted finish that immediately signals your rank. You can feel it drying, drawing the faint moisture from the morning air, leaving behind that crisp, clean sensation that says preparation, says refinement, says you are stepping into the world polished and poised. It's not just on you, it's part of your silhouette now. Every turn of your head, every measured gesture, will release a faint, fragrant trace into the courtly corridors. Mainstream records note that the French crown actually levied taxes on starch and powder at various points, recognizing the substance as both a luxury commodity and a massive economic driver. The demand was so insatiable that it triggered agricultural shifts across the kingdom, with entire provinces dedicating acreage to wheat cultivation specifically to feed the beauty trade. Yet, for all its prestige, the practice wasn't universally celebrated. Clerics and moralists frequently decried the vanity of turning oneself into a pale statue, while early physicians occasionally warned of nasal irritation from excessive inhalation. Still, the court persisted, elevating a simple grooming step into a daily spectacle of wealth, discipline, and visual theatre. You catch the scent again as the valet pauses to assess his work, lowering the sieve with practiced grace. Cloves, lavender, starch. It's a fragrance that clings to memory, dry and elegant, impossible to ignore. Historians still argue whether the elaborate powdering rituals of Versailles functioned as a genuine hygiene practice, or whether they operated as an olfactory uniform, binding the nobility together in a shared sensory experience that marked them as distinctly separate from the unscented, unpowdered populace. Either way, the effect is undeniable. As the final particles drift downward, settling like quiet snow, you feel it. A subtle shift in your own posture, a quiet alignment with expectation. You're no longer just a man in a heavy embroidered coat. You're a figure of the court, ready for the gaze of hundreds, wrapped in a dry, fragrant aura that announces your presence long before you cross a threshold. The valet brushes a stray handful of powder from the rim with a soft linen cloth, his movements economical and silent. The air clears slowly, the fine dust motes drifting toward the floorboards like ash in a cathedral. Your shoulders feel cool beneath the cloak. Your hair holds the structured weight of the starch. The scent lingers in the quiet space between breaths. It's a suspended moment, hovering between the private ritual of dressing and the public performance that awaits. You don't rush it. You let the powder settle. You let the dry calm anchor you. You let the last traces of sleep dissolve into the crisp, clove-laced air. The cloud has fallen. The scent remains. And you, standing in the center of your chamber, are ready for what comes next. The powder has settled, leaving your hair sculpted and your shoulders dusted with that dry, clove-scented calm. The valet steps back, folds the linen cloak away with practiced silence, and the chamber seems to exhale. But the ritual isn't winding down. It's shifting gears. From a nearby mahogany stand, he lifts the sword belt. It's not just an accessory. It's an artifact of lineage, of martial pretense wrapped in aristocratic elegance. He approaches, and before you even feel it, you hear it. A soft, deliberate creak. The leather has been worked, stretched, and oiled until it's supple yet resilient, and as he brings it around your waist, the sound echoes like a quiet acknowledgement of the weight you're about to carry. He fastens the buckle, a polished piece of silver that catches the firelight in a slow liquid flash, and the leather settles against your waistcoat with a firm, grounding pressure. You feel the texture immediately, smooth and slightly glossy on the outside, subtly porous on the inside where it rests against your clothing, molded over years of careful conditioning. As he adjusts the strap, the creak returns, rhythmic and low, like a ship's rigging catching a gentle breeze. It's a sound that speaks of utility disguised as ornament, of a time when gentlemen were expected to know their way around a blade, even if that blade rarely left its scabbard outside the occasional hunting excursion or highly choreographed duel. Then comes the sword itself. He lifts it from its velvet-lined stand, cradles the scabbard with reverent care, and slides it into the waiting leather frogs on the belt. The movement is slow, precise. And then the hilt meets your hip. The silver hilt is cold. Not the sharp, biting chill of winter iron, but the smooth, polished cool of precious metal that's been stored in a dry, temperature-stable chamber. It rests against your palm as you let your fingers naturally fall to it, and the temperature contrast is almost startling after the dry warmth of the powder and the heavy wool of your justacorps. The grip is wrapped in tightly wound silver wire, textured just enough to prevent slipping, and the guard curves outward in elegant, symmetrical sweeps that frame your wrist like a metallic bracket. You give it the lightest test weight, just a subtle shift of your fingers, and the sword responds with a quiet, balanced presence. It's not heavy enough to drag you off stride, but it's substantial enough to remind you that you're carrying history. Mainstream historical accounts confirm that the wearing of swords by civilian noblemen in the 18th century was less about practical combat and more about symbolic authority. Following the decline of the aristocracy's direct military role after the centralized court structures of Louis XIV and 15, the small sword evolved into a regulated accessory, a visible marker of rank that could only be legally worn by those of noble birth or commissioned officers. The blade itself was slender, triangular in cross-section, and designed for thrusting rather than cutting, perfectly suited for the etiquette-driven dueling culture of the era. Its hilt, guard and pommel were often silvered or gold-plated, engraved with delicate floral motifs or familial crests, and treated as essential components of formal dress. Historians still argue whether the persistence of sword-wearing among French courtiers was primarily a nostalgic holdover of controlled aggression, meant to reinforce social dominance in an increasingly bureaucratic state. And if you've ever tried to navigate a narrow palace corridor while keeping a 3-foot blade perfectly aligned with your stride, you'll understand why etiquette manuals dedicated entire chapters to it. Here's a quirky fringe tidbit for you. Some valets were said to test the balance of their master's small sword by placing a single silver écu on the pommel and adjusting the belt frogs until the coin stayed perfectly still. They believed that a sword capable of holding equilibrium in stillness would keep the wearer's judgment steady in conversation, preventing rash words, clumsy bows, or poorly timed witticisms. It sounds like mystical tailoring, but in a court where a misplaced gesture could spark a feud or derail a carefully negotiated alliance, why wouldn't the alignment of your blade be treated like the calibration of a compass? Back to the sensation. The leather belt holds firm, a snug but comfortable band that anchors the weight of the scabbard against your hip. Every time you shift your stance, you feel the gentle friction of the frogs, the soft resistance of the oiled hide, the subtle shift of metal against wool. The silver hilt remains cool to the touch, a steady, grounding presence that seems to draw heat from your fingers, leaving behind a faint, clean chill that lingers even when you release it. You catch a whiff of the leather as you adjust your posture, rich, earthy, lightly oiled with beeswax and tallow, mingling with the lingering cloves and lavender from your hair. It's a rugged, grounded note that contrasts beautifully with the delicate powders and silks, a quiet reminder that beneath the lace and embroidery lies a culture that still valued discipline, bearing, and the restrained threat of controlled force. The creak returns as you take a half step, testing the fit. The leather flexes, the metal whispers against itself, and the sword settles into place like it was always meant to be there. It's strange, really, how an object designed for combat can feel so intimately ceremonial. But that's the paradox of the 18th century court. Everything is layered, everything is coded, everything serves a dual purpose. The sword isn't just for defense, it's for posture. It forces you to keep your weight centered, your shoulders square, your movements deliberate. You can't slouch with a small sword on your hip. You can't shuffle, you have to glide. And in that force elegance, there's a kind of quiet power that doesn't need to be spoken aloud. The valet steps back, his eyes scanning the alignment of the scabbard, checking that it hangs at the precise angle prescribed by court custom. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. The creak has stopped. The hilt is cool. The belt is secure. You feel the weight of it all. The leather, the metal, the unspoken rules, and it grounds you. In a morning built on sensory layers, on textures and temperatures and carefully calibrated restrictions, the sword belt is the anchor. It ties the floating elegance of your attire to the earth. It reminds you that for all the powder and perfume, you are still expected to carry yourself with the quiet authority of those who govern. Mainstream records note that the small sword was so deeply integrated into noble identity that refusing to wear one to court could be interpreted as a sign of disrespect, or worse, a quiet political statement. Etiquette guides of the era included detailed instructions on how to sit without catching the scabbard on the chair, how to bow without letting the guard strike a companion's knee, how to draw without appearing overtly aggressive. It was a language in metal and leather, spoken fluently by those who had spent their lives learning its syntax. Historians still argue whether this elaborate codification of sword etiquette was a genuine attempt to reduce violence at court, or a theatrical exercise in channeling aristocratic rivalry into rigid, non-lethal performance. And if you've ever watched a diplomatic reception where everyone moves with practiced, almost choreographed precision, you might lean toward the latter. You let your hand rest lightly on the pommel for a moment longer. The silver is still cool, still smooth, still waiting. The leather has warmed slightly against your waist, conforming to your shape, the creak silenced into quiet compliance. The chamber feels different now. Charged, purposeful, complete. The powder has settled. The coat rests heavy. The sword hangs true. You catch a final breath, the scent of cloves and oiled leather mingling in the still air, and you know the next step awaits. The pocket inventory, the final brush, the quiet ticking of the clock. They're calling. But for this one, perfect breath, you just feel the creak, the chill, the balance. And you, standing in the center of your chamber, are ready for what comes next. The sword belt settles, the silver hilt cools against your palm, and the valet turns his attention to the waist of your juster corpse. The outer coat is structured, yes, but beneath it, the waistcoat is tailored with hidden intention. Pockets, not the shallow, decorative slits of modern fashion, but deep, purposeful wells designed to carry the weight of your day. He reaches for a small velvet-lined tray resting on the nearby table, and from it, he lifts two objects that seem to catch the light in entirely different ways. The first is your pocket watch, the second your snuff box. He approaches with the watch first. It's cradled in his open palm, heavy and deliberate. As he slides it into the right side pocket, you feel it immediately, the weight. It's not a burden, exactly, but a substantial grounding presence that pulls gently at the fabric, anchoring the side of your torso with a quiet, metallic certainty. The case is solid gold, polished to a mirror finish, cool at first touch but quickly warming to the ambient heat of your coat. The chain follows, a delicate cascade of interlocking links that drapes across your waistcoat, catching the firelight with every subtle shift of your posture. You slip your thumb over the edge of the case, feeling the finely milled winding crown, the smooth enamel dial beneath the crystal, the quiet, rhythmic pulse of the mechanism inside. Tick, 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 tick. It's a soft, steady heartbeat against your hip, a mechanical metronome that will govern your appointments, your bows, your measured pauses in conversation. Mainstream historical accounts tell us that the 18th century pocket watch was far more than a timekeeping device. It was a masterpiece of micro-engineering and a potent status symbol. Crafted by master horologists in Paris, Geneva, or London, these watches contained hundreds of tiny hand-filled components, gears, springs, escapements, assembled under magnification with tools finer than needles. A single watch could take months to complete, and its cost often rivaled that of a fine carriage or a small estate. For the French nobility, carrying one wasn't just about knowing the hour. It was about displaying your connection to the cutting edge of science, your patronage of artisanal excellence, and your participation in a courtly rhythm where punctuality was a form of power. Historians still argue whether the widespread adoption of personal timepieces among the aristocracy was primarily a practical response to the increasingly scheduled nature of court life, or a deliberate performance of modernity that allowed the elite to distinguish themselves from the agrarian, sun-measured rhythms of the lower classes. And if you've ever tried to coordinate a salon gathering when half the attendees are politely ignoring the hour, you'll appreciate the social weight of a ticking gold case. Here's a quirky fringe tidbit for you. Some valets were said to wind their master's watch only while standing at a specific angle to the window, believing that the morning light would set the mainspring's tension for optimal accuracy throughout the day. They'd also gently tap the crystal once after winding, a soft, precise click, to settle the balance wheel, convinced that an undisturbed start prevented the mechanism from catching the wearer's anxieties. It sounds like horological folklore, but in a culture where time itself was becoming a commodity, why wouldn't the act of winding your watch be treated like tuning an instrument before a symphony? Back to the sensation. The weight of the watch is constant, a familiar drag against your thigh that reminds you of the day's forward momentum. The chain rests lightly across the silk of your waistcoat, cool and smooth, occasionally catching on the edge of a button with a soft metallic sigh. You can feel the vibrations of the movement through the gold case, a tiny, rhythmic tremor that travels up through the fabric to your skin. It's oddly soothing, like a second pulse, steady and unhurried. You press your palm flat against your pocket for a moment, feeling the solid curve of the case beneath your fingers, the precise geometry of a world that can be held, carried, and controlled. The valet doesn't linger on the watch. He moves to the second object, the snuff box. He lifts it with both hands, treating it with the same reverence he'd afford a reliquary. The box is oval, crafted from gold and enameled in a deep iridescent blue that shifts to violet in the firelight. As he presses it into the left side pocket, you feel the immediate contrast. Smooth, cold, unyielding. The enamel surface is glass-like, polished to a high gloss that feels almost liquid under your fingertips, but with a temperature that draws the warmth right out of your hand. It's heavy, too. Not as dense as the watch, but substantial, its weight distributed evenly, designed to sit flush against your body without protruding or catching. He closes the flap of your coat over it, and for a moment the coolness lingers, a quiet reminder of its presence beneath the layers of wool and silk. Mainstream historical records note that snuff-taking was one of the most pervasive social rituals of the 18th century European elite, and the snuff box was its central artifact. Originally imported from the New World, tobacco was dried, ground and scented with essences of citrus, ambergris or violet, before being presented in elaborately decorated cases. These boxes were rarely mere containers. They were canvases for miniature painters, engineers for complex hinge mechanisms, and diplomatic currencies gifted between monarchs and courtiers. A well-crafted enamel snuff box could feature landscapes, mythological scenes, or even portraits, all painted in microscopic detail under magnification. The act of opening the box, tapping a pinch onto the back of the hand, and inhaling it was a highly choreographed performance, a moment of shared pause in the relentless pace of courtly interaction. Historians still argue whether the elaborate exchange of snuff boxes functioned primarily as a genuine social lubricant or as a highly coded system of patronage and alliance building that reinforced existing power structures. And if you've ever watched a group of diplomats slowly rotate a decorated box while exchanging carefully measured compliments, you might suspect it was a bit of both. The coolness of the enamel against your hip is a grounding counterpoint to the warm weight of the gold watch. Together, they create a balanced architecture beneath your coat, heavy on the right, cool on the left, a physical symmetry that mirrors the careful equilibrium you're expected to maintain in your bearing. You run your fingers over the edge of the pocket, feeling the smooth curve of the box beneath the fabric. The hinge is silent, the enamel flawless, the craftsmanship so precise it feels almost alive. You can already imagine the ritual that will follow later in the day. The gentle lift of the lid, the faint scent of bergamot and aged tobacco, the quiet tap of gold against fingernail, the measured inhalation that signals a shift in conversation or a moment of reflection. It's a small object, but it carries the weight of 1,000 social cues, a portable stage for the performance of grace. The valet steps back, his hands now empty, his work nearly complete. The pockets are filled, the watch ticks steadily, the snuff box rests cool and still. You shift your weight slightly, testing the balance. The chain drapes without clinking, the box sits flush against your thigh, the watch pulses with quiet regularity. It's a sensory triad, weight, cold, rhythm, that anchors you to the present, that reminds you of the tangible objects that will accompany you through the day's performances. You catch a faint metallic tang in the air, mingling with the cloves and lavender, a subtle note of polished gold and fired enamel that speaks of permanence, of craftsmanship, of a world where even the smallest accessories are treated as heirlooms. You let your hands fall to your sides, feeling the gentle pull of the chain, the cool pressure of the box, the steady tick against your ribs. It's strange how something so functional can feel so ceremonial. But that's the court. Everything is elevated, everything is intentional, everything is meant to be felt. The pockets aren't just storage, they're a balance. The watch isn't just time, it's rhythm. The snuff box isn't just tobacco, it's ritual. And as you stand there, surrounded by the quiet hum of preparation, You know the final steps are approaching. The brush, the dust, the ticking clock, they're calling. But for this one, perfect breath, you just feel the weight, the chill, the steady pulse. And you standing in the center of your chamber are ready for what comes next. The weight settles, the chain rests, the enamel cools against your hip, and then the valet steps back. The chamber exhales. There's a pause, a deliberate, suspended quiet that stretches between the final fastening and the moment you step through the door. You don't move. He doesn't either. This is the part of the ritual that belongs to stillness, to inspection, to the quiet perfection of a moment held just long enough to be noticed. He reaches for a small brush from a velvet-lined drawer. It's not a coarse grooming tool, it's a precision instrument, bristles cut from badger hair, trimmed to a whisper-soft density that can lift dust without disturbing a single thread. He approaches, and the first touch is barely there. A feather-light sweep across the shoulder of your justicorpse. You feel it as a suggestion, a ghost of contact that traces the gold-wrapped embroidery, the crisp line of the lapel, the smooth expanse of silks at your cuff. It's rhythmic, deliberate. Each stroke follows the grain of the fabric, gathering invisible motes of powder, stray fibers, the microscopic debris of a palace that never truly sleeps. You close your eyes. The sound is the only thing that matters now, a soft, dry whisper. Shh, shh, like wind moving through dry reeds, or pages turning in an empty library. It's hypnotic. With every pass of the brush, the tension in your shoulders drops a fraction. The valet's hand moves in slow, sweeping arcs, never pressing too hard, never rushing. He's not just cleaning, he's consecrating. In a world where every speck of dust could be read as neglect, where a single misplaced thread might signal a household in decline, this quiet maintenance is an act of preservation. Mainstream historical accounts tell us that the final inspection before a noble left his chamber was a highly codified step in the dressing ritual. Valets were trained to spot imperfections from 3 paces away, using natural light to catch dust on dark wool, stray powder on lace collars, or smudges on polished buckles. Brushes like the one gliding over your shoulders were kept in dedicated cases, cleaned with mild soap, and stored away from direct sunlight to preserve the delicate bristles. Historians still argue whether this obsessive attention to microscopic cleanliness was a practical necessity in an era of coal dust and unpaved streets, or a psychological mechanism that reinforced the nobility's belief in their own inherent purity. And if you've ever spent 10 minutes picking lint off a black suit before a formal event, you already know how deeply a single speck can mess with your confidence. Here's a quirky fringe tidbit for you. Some senior valets were said to whisper a single syllable to the bristles before beginning the final sweep, something like clear or steady, believing that the soft hairs carried the intention of the stroke into the fabric. They'd also rotate the brush clockwise around the wearer's silhouette 3 times before the first touch, claiming it aligned the dust so it would fall away cleanly rather than cling to the gold thread. It sounds like textile magic, but in a culture where grooming bordered on ritual, why wouldn't the tools themselves be treated like quiet accomplices? The brushing continues. Left shoulder, right shoulder, down the back, across the sleeves. Each stroke is lighter than the last, until the brush barely grazes the surface. You can feel the air shifting around you, cool and still, carrying the faint scent of badger bristles and aged wood. The powder cloud from earlier has settled completely now, leaving only a crisp, dry fragrance in its wake. Your hair is perfectly coiffed. Your cravat stands rigid and proud. Your coat hangs heavy and flawless. And through it all, the only other sound is the clock. It sits on the mantelpiece, a gilt bronze carriage clock with a glass dome and a steady, unhurried pendulum. Tick-tock, tick-tock. The rhythm is soft but undeniable, a metallic heartbeat that fills the quiet spaces between the valet's brushstrokes. You don't need to look at it to know the time. The rhythm has been marking your morning since you first opened your eyes. It's a comforting sound, really. Predictable, steady, unbothered by court intrigue, by political maneuvering, by the endless performance of status. It just ticks. Mainstream historical records note that ornate mantel clocks became ubiquitous in French noble chambers by the mid-18th century, not just as timekeepers but as symbols of order and control in an era where schedules were increasingly dictating the flow of court life. The pendulum's swing was often calibrated to match the exact length of a royal foot, tying domestic time to state authority. Historians still argue whether the proliferation of precision clocks in aristocratic homes actually helped synchronize court routines or merely introduced a new layer of anxiety about punctuality that fractured the more fluid, event-driven rhythms of earlier centuries. And if you've ever felt your stomach drop when a diplomatic reception starts exactly on the hour, you'll recognize that familiar, gentle tension. The valet pauses. The brush hovers for a fraction of a second, then lowers to the velvet tray. He steps back. His eyes sweep over you one final time, slow, methodical, taking in every line, every fold, every inch of silk and gold. He doesn't nod. He doesn't speak. He simply steps aside, opening the path to the door. The inspection is complete. The room is perfectly still. The clock ticks, the fire hisses. The heavy velvet curtains frame the morning light. You are ready. It's strange how a morning built on layers of sensation. The cool linen, the stiff cravat, the heavy coat, the dry powder, the cold silver ends in silence. But that's the point, isn't it? The performance is over. For now. The stage is set. The costume is flawless. The props are in their pockets. And you're standing at the threshold. You take a slow breath. The air feels lighter. The weight of the day hasn't fully settled yet. It's hovering, waiting. But you're anchored. The watch ticks against your hip. The sword hangs true. The brush rests quietly on the tray. Everything is in its place. And as you stand there, suspended between the quiet of the chamber and the noise of the corridors beyond, you realize something simple. You've survived the ritual. Not just survived it, but moved through it, breath by breath, layer by layer, sensation by sensation. The morning was never just about getting dressed. It was about becoming, about stepping into a role that demanded everything and gave back the quiet certainty of preparation. You don't need to rush. The clock will keep ticking. The palace will keep breathing. And for this one, perfect, suspended moment, you just, clean cloaked, complete. The heavy oak door remains closed. The corridor beyond is quiet, waiting. Your valet has already begun to gather the discarded linens, his movements fading into the background like a dream dissolving at dawn. You don't turn around. You don't need to. The room holds you one last time, wrapping you in the soft hum of stillness, the steady rhythm of the clock, the faint warmth of the dying fire. It's enough. You've done the work. You've worn the weight. You've become the morning. And now as the final brushstroke lingers in the air like a whispered goodbye, you simply let it all settle. The dust has fallen. The time has passed. The chamber is yours, just for this breath.